Forget absolutely everything you know about normal pickup trucks. While everyone idolizes the massive Ford F-150 or the rugged Chevy C10, automotive history has been secretly hiding some absolute monsters. Today we are exposing the 10 most bizarre, completely insane classic pickup trucks you will not believe actually existed on real roads. We are talking about legendary American engineering failures that literally trap drivers inside, and a horrifying three-wheeled British contraption so dangerous its entire engine turns with the steering wheel. You absolutely have to see the terrifying, mind-bending truck I'm revealing at the very end of this video. Prepare to be shocked. Hit that subscribe button right now, buckle up, and let us dive into the weirdest workhorses ever built. Let us kick things off right here in America with a truck that looks completely normal at first glance, but hides a legendary engineering disaster: the Ford F-100 unibody. In 1961, Ford decided to revolutionize the pickup truck market by breaking a fundamental rule of truck design. Instead of mounting a separate cab and bed onto a heavy steel frame, they welded the cab and the bed together into one continuous piece of sheet metal. It looked sleek, modern, and incredibly stylish. Ford aggressively marketed it as the ultimate smooth-riding truck for the modern American worker, hoping to dominate the entire market. Mechanically, it was offered with Ford's reliable inline-six engine or the mighty Y-block V8, making it a very capable performer on paper. The integrated body significantly reduced production costs and gave the truck a very clean, car-like appearance that dealers absolutely loved showing off in their showrooms. The payload capacity was rated at a standard half-ton, or roughly 1,000 pounds, which seemed perfectly adequate for daily hauling tasks. Ford executives genuinely thought they had engineered the absolute future of the American pickup truck, believing that buyers desperately wanted the comfort of a family sedan mixed with heavy utility. But here is the devastating twist. Because trucks are meant to haul heavy loads, their frames naturally flex under stress. In a normal truck, the gap between the cab and bed absorbs this flex. In the unibody Ford, there was absolutely no gap. If you loaded the bed up with heavy rocks or equipment, the entire body would literally bend in half. It bent so badly that the doors would jam shut, trapping the driver inside, or worse, they would pop wide open while driving down the highway at 60 miles per hour. If you thought a bending truck was bad, wait until you see our next tiny British workhorse. Entering the post-war era, the British desperately needed a highly versatile farm vehicle, giving birth to the legendary Land Rover Series 1 80-inch pickup. Visually, it is an absolute icon, looking like a boxy military jeep that suddenly decided to take up farming. Born in 1948, the Series 1 was Great Britain's direct answer to the American Willys Jeep, but it came with its own incredibly unique flavor. While the Americans focused on sheer brute force, the British needed something that could survive the harshest agricultural environments while dealing with severe post-war material shortages across the entire country. Because heavy steel was heavily rationed in the United Kingdom after World War II, Rover engineers made a brilliant pivot. They built the body panels entirely out of a special aluminum alloy called Burma-Bright. This meant the truck was incredibly lightweight, weighing just over 2,600 pounds and naturally rust-resistant. Sitting on a tiny 80-inch wheelbase, it was powered by a modest 1.6-liter engine, producing just 50 horsepower, coupled with a robust four-wheel drive system. Its top speed was a mere 50 miles per hour, but it could conquer almost any muddy field or steep dirt hill without breaking a sweat. The wild twist about the Series 1 is not just its aluminum body, it is the fact that it was literally designed to replace a farm tractor. It featured a mechanical power takeoff, or PTO system, that allowed farmers to hook the truck's engine up to circular saws, heavy threshing machines, or large water pumps. You could drive it to the field, use it to power your heavy farm equipment all day long, and then drive it straight home. But while the British were building off-road legends, they were also making an adorable little grocery getter coming up next. Behold the Morris Minor pickup, a tiny truck that looks significantly more like a cartoon character than a serious commercial vehicle. With its big bug-eyed headlights and softly rounded fenders, it looks like it absolutely belongs in a quaint British village delivering fresh glass bottles of milk, not hauling heavy construction materials. It is arguably the most charming and least intimidating commercial vehicle ever produced in history. When you look at it, you immediately want to hug it rather than load its bed full of dirty gravel or heavy lumber for a serious weekend construction project. Introduced in 1953 as a light commercial variant of the highly successful Morris Minor passenger car, this little truck was smartly built on a separate strengthened chassis to handle extra cargo weight. Under the hood was the legendary A-Series engine, initially a tiny 803 cubic centimeter motor, producing a laughable 30 horsepower. It weighed a mere 1,700 pounds empty. It was mechanically simple, exceptionally reliable, and incredibly cheap to run, making it a massive favorite among small business owners, local bakers, and tradesmen across the United Kingdom during the 1950s. However, the twist is just how comically underpowered and tiny it is by modern American standards. We are talking about a so-called truck that took almost 30 agonizing seconds to reach 60 miles per hour, if it could even get there while fully loaded. Its maximum payload was a measly 560 pounds. By United States standards, it is basically a reinforced, street-legal golf cart, yet it single-handedly mobilized a massive chunk of the British working class. Italy, however, had its own incredibly stylish take on the micro-hauler, which we will look at right now. Say hello to the Fiat 1100 Industriale, a vehicle that aggressively proves Italians cannot help but inject high-end style into absolutely everything, even a filthy farm truck. With its distinctive sloping front grille, elegant suicide doors, and beautiful curves, it looks like a truck wearing a tailored Italian suit. It is a commercial vehicle that somehow feels deeply romantic and sophisticated. Imagine stepping out of a muddy farm field into a vehicle that was designed with the same artistic flair as a classic European sports car. It truly is a masterpiece of light commercial design. Produced in the late 1950s, the Industriale was directly based on the wildly popular Fiat 1100 family sedan. Fiat essentially chopped the back half off their hit family car, reinforced the rear suspension, and bolted on a wooden or steel dropside bed. It was powered by a spirited 1.1-liter four-cylinder engine producing about 40 horsepower, pushing a curb weight of roughly 1,900 pounds. It was not built for heavy industry, but rather for navigating the incredibly tight, winding cobblestone streets of Rome and Florence, where a full-sized American truck would get completely stuck. The bizarre twist here is the sheer existence of a luxury farm truck during that specific era. Many of these trucks came with the exact same beautifully crafted dashboards, comfortable seating, and stylish steering wheels as the passenger cars they were based on. Imagine hauling smelly manure and dirty construction debris in a vehicle that feels like a vintage luxury sedan on the inside. It was a bizarre clash of high fashion and blue-collar labor. Speaking of tiny, stylish trucks, our next vehicle makes the Fiat look like an absolute giant by comparison. This is the Austin A35 pickup, a truck so exceptionally rare and so unbelievably tiny that most hardcore car enthusiasts do not even know it actually exists. Visually, it looks like a mad scientist took a shrink ray to a classic pickup truck. It has the front end of a cheerful little British economy car, which then abruptly ends in a miniature, almost toy-like cargo bed. It is so small that a tall American adult could easily look right over the roof without standing on their tiptoes. It redefines the exact meaning of a micro-truck. Introduced in 1956, the A35 pickup was mechanically identical to the Austin A35 sedan. It featured a tiny 948 cubic centimeter A-Series engine, outputting a blistering 34 horsepower. The entire truck weighed a hilarious 1,500 pounds empty. It was explicitly designed for very light urban deliveries, think local florists, village bakers, and neighborhood handymen. The payload capacity was exceptionally small, making it significantly more of a mobile marketing billboard for local boutique shops than a serious heavy-hauling work vehicle for construction sites. The massive twist with the A35 pickup is its extreme rarity, combined with a quick trivia question for you. Austin only produced around 475 of these tiny trucks before pulling the plug. Finding a surviving one today is like finding a unicorn. Now for our mid-roll trivia. Do you know which major automaker was crazy enough to put a high-revving sports car engine into a pickup truck bed in the 1970s? Drop your guesses in the comments below. Before we reveal that answer, let us take a trip behind the Iron Curtain. Welcome to East Germany and the IFA Framo V901/2. If you want a truck that perfectly encapsulates the grim utilitarian vibe of the Cold War era, this is absolutely it. It looks like a prop from a vintage spy movie featuring a narrow, upright grille, aggressively bulging fenders, and an overall crude design that screams 1930s, despite being built well into the 1950s and 60s. It is a harsh, unapologetic machine built purely for function, completely devoid of any Western concepts like comfort, style, or smooth driving dynamics. Manufactured by the East German state-owned conglomerate IFA, the Framo was the primary light commercial vehicle for the entire nation. It featured a basic steel ladder frame, a solid rear axle, and a very simple wooden bed. Weighing in at around 2,200 pounds, it was built with whatever substandard materials the Soviet-backed state could scrounge up. This meant it was incredibly rugged, utterly devoid of any driver comfort, and specifically designed to be easily repaired on the side of a dirt road with nothing but a hammer and a cheap wrench. But the truly bizarre twist lies right under the hood. Unlike traditional four-stroke engines found in Western trucks, the Framo was powered by a tiny 900 cubic centimeter, three-cylinder, two-stroke engine producing just 28 horsepower. Yes, a two-stroke engine. This meant that this commercial delivery truck sounded exactly like an angry, oversized chainsaw and left a massive, choking cloud of blue, oily smoke wherever it went. America had its own incredibly weird micro trucks too, and this next one was originally sold directly inside household appliance stores. Meet the Crossley pickup. If you firmly thought small trucks were strictly a European or Japanese concept, Powell Crossley would like to have a serious word with you. The Crossley pickup looks incredibly out of proportion, resembling a child's pedal car that somehow accidentally got approved for a real license plate. It was aggressively small, standing in stark, almost comical contrast to the massive chrome-covered, fuel-hungry land yachts that the traditional American auto industry was actively producing in the late 1940s. It proved that Americans could build tiny things too. Powell Crossley was an eccentric millionaire who made his massive fortune selling affordable radios and refrigerators, and he decided America urgently needed a cheap, micro-sized vehicle. The 1947 Crossley pickup was built in Indiana and weighed an astonishingly low 1,100 pounds. It was powered by an unbelievably tiny 724 cubic centimeter overhead cam four-cylinder engine that was actually highly advanced for its time, producing 26 horsepower. It possessed a stated quarter-ton payload capacity and was incredibly cheap for the average consumer to purchase. The absolute mind-blowing twist: Powell Crossley used his existing massive retail network to sell these little trucks. That means in the late 1940s, you could literally walk into a department store or an appliance shop to buy a new refrigerator and buy a Crossley pickup truck right there in the exact same aisle. It was so incredibly light that two strong men could easily pick up the back end and manually slide it around a parking lot. Now remember that trivia question? Here comes the high-revving sports car truck. The answer to our trivia is Mazda, and the truck is the absolutely legendary Mazda rotary pickup, widely known as the REPU. From the outside, it looks like a classic, very handsome 1970s mini truck equipped with some aggressive flared fenders and a bold front grille. It looks like it is ready to haul some dirt bikes out to the California desert. But under the hood, it hides a completely insane secret that makes it one of the most unique, high-performance commercial trucks in all of global automotive history. Produced from 1974 to 1977 exclusively for the North American market, the REPU weighed around 2,700 pounds and was famously powered by Mazda's legendary 13B Wankel rotary engine. Instead of standard pistons pumping up and down, it used triangular rotors spinning aggressively inside a housing. This meant the truck produced 110 horsepower and had an absurd 7,000 RPM redline. It did not sound like a work truck, it sounded like an angry swarm of bees, and it drove exactly like a lightweight sports car with a bed on the back. The fatal twist for the REPU was its incredibly poor timing. Rotary engines are wonderfully smooth and shockingly powerful, but they are notoriously thirsty for high-octane fuel. Mazda launched this fast, gas-guzzling, high-revving truck right in the middle of the catastrophic 1970s global energy crisis. Fuel prices skyrocketed overnight, and a small truck that got terrible gas mileage was suddenly the absolute last thing any American wanted to buy. Mazda did not just make rotary trucks, though. They made three-wheeled ones too, which we will see next. Enter the Mazda K360, a vehicle that completely defies all traditional American automotive logic. It looks like a small motorcycle, and a miniature pickup truck had a very strange, highly compact baby. With two standard wheels in the back, just one single wheel in the front, and a tiny fully enclosed cabin that looks suspiciously like a helicopter bubble canopy. The K360 is an absolute masterpiece of bizarre Japanese spatial efficiency. It makes a classic VW Beetle look like a massive luxury Land Cruiser. Introduced in 1959, this was a strict K-truck, designed to comply with rigid Japanese government regulations regarding maximum vehicle size and engine displacement. Weighing just 1,069 pounds, it was powered by a tiny 356 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin engine mounted right behind the driver, producing a mighty 16 horsepower. The three-wheeled design was not just for quirky looks, it gave the truck a ridiculously tight turning radius, allowing it to navigate the extremely narrow, heavily crowded alleys of post-war Japanese cities with absolute ease. The terrifying twist: basic physics. Three-wheeled vehicles with a single wheel in the front are inherently highly unstable. If you took a sharp corner a little too fast in a Mazda K360, especially with a top-heavy payload in the back, the entire truck would easily tip right over onto its side. It was a brilliant, highly efficient city vehicle, but an absolute rolling nightmare for high-speed highway stability. But our 10th and final truck takes the three-wheel concept to an absolutely terrifying level. It is time to reveal the monster. Here it is, the Bond minicar pickup. This absolutely horrifying British monstrosity is easily the weirdest, most terrifying excuse for a pickup truck ever conceived by mankind. It has a sharp wedge-like front end, only three wheels, and a body made largely out of fiberglass and cheap aluminum. It does not look like a functional commercial truck. It genuinely looks like a broken carnival ride that somehow managed to escape the local fairgrounds. It is the truck I promised to reveal, and its engineering will blow your mind. Built in the 1950s by Sharp's Commercials in the United Kingdom, the Bond minicar was explicitly designed to be legally driven by people who only possessed a basic motorcycle license. To achieve this legal loophole, it used a tiny Villiers two-stroke motorcycle engine, displacing around 197 cubic centimeters and producing a laughable 8 horsepower. It weighed an unbelievable 430 pounds. It was incredibly light, incredibly cheap to buy, and offered a tiny payload area strictly intended for the absolute smallest of local urban deliveries. But here is the jaw-dropping, terrifying twist. The engine was not securely mounted under a traditional hood. It was mounted directly onto the single front wheel assembly. When you turn the steering wheel inside the cabin, the entire engine, the complete gearbox, and the front wheel all turned together. Because it used a basic motorcycle engine, early models did not even have a reverse gear. If you drove this truck into a tight parking spot, you literally had to get out, grab the side of the truck, and physically push it backwards yourself. From heavy American frames that literally bent in half to terrifying British engines that turned with the steering wheel, classic trucks were wildly experimental and deeply flawed. Which of these 10 bizarre pickup trucks would you actually want a daily drive? Let me know down in the comments right now. I would absolutely love to hear if you would risk your life driving the Bond minicar. If you enjoyed this deep dive into automotive history, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next time. Prepare to have your mind completely blown because everything you thought you knew about classic pickup trucks is a total lie. Forget the boring, identical metal boxes driving around today. Decades ago, automotive engineering was an absolutely lawless wasteland of bizarre ideas, terrifying physics, and spectacular, dangerous failures. Today, we expose the 10 most bizarre classic pickup trucks ever unleashed on the pavement. We are talking about dangerously unbalanced machines requiring massive steel counterweights, luxury cars violently chopped in half, and terrifying three-wheeled haulers that were essentially a death wish on the highway. You will not believe the sheer engineering insanity hiding at the #1 spot. Stick around until the very end and please smash that subscribe button. Kicking off our list at number 10 is the 1958 Chevrolet Apache Fleetside, a truck that signaled a massive shift in how Americans viewed utility vehicles. Before the late 50s, trucks were purely agricultural or industrial tools, built with simple, narrow cargo boxes and bulging rear fenders known as stepsides. But Chevrolet decided it was time to bring passenger car styling to the job site. They introduced the Fleetside, featuring smooth, slab-sided bed walls that integrated perfectly with the cab. To add to the flair, they slapped on a massive chrome-heavy front grille and dual-quad headlights. While it might look relatively normal to our modern eyes, back in 1958, this was a radical departure from the norm. It was a bold statement that a truck did not have to be ugly to be useful. Underneath the stylish exterior, it still possessed the rugged Task Force chassis and a reliable V8 engine, making it a highly capable worker. However, its heavy reliance on chrome and stylized body lines meant that owners were suddenly much more hesitant to toss heavy gravel or metal tools into the back, shifting the truck's primary purpose forever. What is truly shocking about the Apache Fleetside today is its meteoric rise in the collector car market. Back in 1958, you could drive one of these off the dealer lot for around $2,000, making it a very affordable tool for the working class. Today, because of its iconic quad headlight design and historical significance, a beautifully restored Apache will easily command over $60,000 at auction. If you think those quad headlights were a bold design choice, just wait until you see how Chevrolet tried to put sports car fiberglass on a pickup. Coming in at number 9 is the Chevrolet Cameo Carrier, introduced in 1955, which represents one of the most fascinating failed experiments in truck history. Chevrolet wanted a premium truck that looked as smooth as a Bel Air, but stamping entirely new steel bedsides for a low-production luxury truck was simply too expensive. Their bizarre solution: they took a standard narrow step-side steel cargo box and bolted sleek, stylish fiberglass panels onto the outside of it. It featured a beautifully flush exterior, passenger car hubcaps, and a gorgeous two-tone paint job for the era. Unfortunately, this brilliant styling exercise quickly ran into harsh reality when owners tried to use it as an actual truck. This was a classic failed experiment in utility. The exterior fiberglass panels were notoriously fragile. If you accidentally dropped a heavy toolbox over the side or clipped a wooden fence post on the farm, the beautiful fiberglass would completely shatter or crack, requiring specialized and very expensive body repairs. Furthermore, because the fiberglass was just a facade over a traditional narrow bed, you did not actually gain any extra cargo space despite the wide appearance. Because of its high initial price tag and its absolute lack of practical durability, the Cameo Carrier was swiftly discontinued after just a few years of limited production. However, this failure in the 1950s translates to massive price shocks today. Its extreme rarity and undeniable beauty have made it a holy grail for classic car collectors. While it originally cost around $2,000, finding a pristine Chevrolet Cameo today will easily drain over $70,000 from your bank account. Chevy was not the only one trying to make trucks fancy in weird ways. At number 8, we have the Dodge B-Series, affectionately known as the Pilot House, built between 1948 and 1953. In the post-war era, truck manufacturers were desperately looking for ways to make their vehicles safer and much easier to drive. Dodge's engineering team decided that the absolute biggest problem with trucks was a lack of visibility. Their solution was to completely redesign the cab, moving the front axle back and the engine forward, which allowed them to push the passenger cab higher and further up the chassis to give the driver a better vantage point. They then wrapped the entire cab in an enormous amount of glass, including massive rear quarter windows, creating what they heavily marketed as the pilot house cab for its airplane-like 360-degree visibility. While the visibility was undeniably fantastic, the design became a textbook failed experiment in automotive aesthetics. By raising the cab and making it so tall and upright, the truck looked incredibly awkward and very top-heavy compared to the sleek, lower-slung designs that were rapidly emerging from competitors like Ford and Chevrolet at the very same time. Drivers appreciated being able to see out of the massive windows, but buyers simply did not want to be seen driving something that looked so utterly disproportionate. The tall, boxy cab alienated a large portion of the consumer base. Ultimately, the pilot house lost the sales war as form triumphed over pure function. Today, they remain a quirky piece of automotive history, starting to gain a cult following among vintage truck enthusiasts. But while Dodge was building literal glass houses on wheels, another company decided to chop a luxury car in half to create our next weird machine. Number 7 brings us to the luxurious and incredibly strange Hudson Big Boy, produced primarily from 1939 through 1947. Long before Chevrolet invented the El Camino or Ford brought us the Ranchero, Hudson decided to blend the comfort of a premium passenger car with the utility of a heavy pickup truck. They essentially took the front end of their luxurious Commodore sedan and grafted on a massive, heavy-duty 3/4-ton cargo bed. The result was a truck that featured gorgeous, aerodynamic Art Deco car styling up front, complete with a lavishly appointed interior. However, the Hudson Big Boy was a magnificent failed experiment in market placement. Hudson equipped the truck with an independent front suspension, an absolute rarity for work vehicles at the time, which gave it an incredibly smooth car-like ride. The problem was the target audience. Farmers and construction workers did not want to pay a premium for a luxury ride in fancy chrome. They wanted cheap, indestructible, solid axles. Conversely, the wealthy buyers who could afford a Hudson had absolutely no need for a massive cargo bed to haul dirty manure or heavy lumber. Because it failed to capture a significant audience, production numbers for the Hudson Big Boy were incredibly low, making it one of the rarest classic trucks in existence today. Prepare for a massive price shock. While it struggled to find buyers when it was brand new, classic car collectors today will fiercely bid well over $50,000 for a well-preserved or fully restored example of this luxurious oddity. Speaking of absolute luxury, what happens when you take the most ridiculous car styling trend of the 1950s and glue it onto a farm truck? Enter the swept side. Our number 6 spot goes to the absurd and glorious 1957 Dodge swept side, a vehicle that represents the absolute peak of automotive excess. During this era, America was utterly obsessed with the jet age and space exploration, which translated into cars with massive soaring tail fins. Dodge executives looked at their rather plain lineup of pickup trucks, looked at the wildly popular cars from Chevrolet and Ford, and made a desperate, bizarre decision. They took the massive, sweeping fiberglass tail fins straight off their two-door station wagons and literally bolted them onto a standard half-ton pickup truck bed. The result was a glorious failed experiment where form aggressively overtook function. The swept side looked like a futuristic spaceship from the rear and a boring tractor from the front. But those massive station wagon fins severely intruded on the interior cargo space, making the actual bed incredibly narrow and frustratingly impractical for anyone who actually needed to haul wide loads. It was a truck designed purely for show, complete with extravagant two-tone paint jobs, wide white wall tires, and heavy chrome trim. Be honest, would you drive a truck with massive tail fins today? Let me know in the comments. Unsurprisingly, the truck-buying public was not impressed. The swept side was expensive, impractical, and suffered from terrible sales, leading Dodge to pull the plug after just a few years of very limited production. But here is the ultimate price shock. Because it was such a sales disaster, very few survive today. A pristine Dodge swept side is now considered an automotive unicorn, frequently commanding eye-watering prices upwards of $80,000 to $100,000 at premium auctions. Tail fins are weird, but at least the engine was in the right place. Our next truck completely flipped the script. At number 5 is the incredibly sketchy 1961 Ford Econoline pickup, a vehicle that completely redefined the concept of weight distribution. Inspired by the strict need for maximum cargo space and a compact footprint, Ford utilized a cab-over design. They pushed the driver and passenger all the way to the absolute front edge of the vehicle and shoved the engine directly between the seats inside the passenger cab. This layout created a massive uninterrupted flatbed in the rear, perfect for hauling large items while keeping the truck's overall length surprisingly short and easy to park. However, this brilliant packaging led to a genuinely terrifying failed experiment in physics. Because the heavy engine, the transmission, and the passengers were all located entirely in front of the front axle, the rear end of the Econoline pickup was practically weightless. It was so completely unbalanced that during hard braking, especially when the bed was empty, the rear wheels would literally lift off the ground. Ford's official, historically documented solution was to bolt a massive 165-pound solid steel counterweight directly over the rear axle at the factory to prevent nose stands. Despite its dangerous handling quirks and the roaring engine cooking the passengers in the summer heat, the Econoline pickup survived its era as a niche work vehicle. The price shock here comes from modern hipster and surf culture. These bizarre, snub-nosed trucks have become retro-cool icons. What was once a cheap, terrifying work truck now regularly sells for $30,000 to $40,000 to enthusiasts who absolutely love their unique, boxy charm. Ford's cab-over was sketchy, but the Germans took the rear-engine truck idea and made it an absolute global icon. Number 4 is the legendary Volkswagen Type 2 pickup, a vehicle that took standard American truck engineering and threw it entirely out the window. Based on the iconic VW microbus, this pickup featured a completely bizarre layout with an air-cooled flat-4 engine hidden entirely in the back, tucked neatly underneath the cargo bed. To strictly maximize utility, Volkswagen designed the truck with drop-down sides. The rear tailgate as well as both side panels of the bed could fold completely flat, turning the truck into a massive rolling flatbed table that was easy to load. While highly innovative, the Volkswagen Type 2 was a major failed experiment when it came to heavy-duty American expectations. The engine compartment underneath the bed meant the load floor was awkwardly high, and there was a secondary storage locker located between the axles known as the treasure chest. More importantly, it was dangerously slow. Producing barely 40 horsepower in early models, its top speed was a miserable 50 miles per hour. Loading the bed with any serious weight meant crawling up hills at a snail's pace, making it woefully inadequate compared to Detroit V8 trucks. Yet this underpowered rear-engine oddity has experienced the most insane price shock of all. Embraced by the counterculture movement of the 1960s, the Type 2 became an enduring icon of peace, love, and surfing. Today, a pristine early-generation Volkswagen pickup, particularly the rare double cab versions, will easily fetch anywhere from $50,000 to well over $100,000, proving that character often outvalues pure horsepower. Volkswagen hid the engine in the back, but America's most famous off-road brand decided to shove the driver completely over the front axle. At number 3, we introduce the mind-bending Jeep FC-150, an acronym that stands for Forward Control. Introduced in 1956 and designed by the legendary industrial designer Brooks Stevens, the FC-150 is arguably the strangest-looking four-wheel drive vehicle ever mass-produced. Jeep essentially took their standard, highly capable CJ5 off-road chassis and bolted a cab entirely over the engine, pushing the front steel bumper directly below the driver's feet. This allowed Jeep to offer a full-sized 6-foot cargo bed on a tiny, incredibly maneuverable 81-inch wheelbase, making it a mountain goat on rocky trails. However, the FC-150 was a massive failed experiment in driver psychology and highway stability. From the driver's seat, there was absolutely no hood in front of you. You were staring straight down at the speeding pavement. When you hit the brakes, the visual sensation was utterly terrifying, as if you were about to pitch forward directly over the bumper and smash your face into the asphalt. Furthermore, its incredibly short wheelbase and narrow track width meant that the vehicle felt incredibly top-heavy and dangerously unstable at highway speeds, relegating it strictly to slow farm work. Because it was too weird and intimidating for the mainstream American truck buyer, the FC series never sold in massive numbers and was quietly discontinued. But today comes the inevitable price shock. Classic Jeep enthusiasts go absolutely crazy for these bizarre pug-nosed trucks. A well-restored Jeep FC-150 is incredibly rare today and will easily command $40,000 to $60,000 as collectors desperately hunt for this odd piece of history. Jeep's proportions were bizarre, but Chevrolet's next attempt at a rear-engine truck included a feature so weird it is a miracle it was ever built. Our runner-up for the weirdest classic truck is the 1961 Corvair 95 Rampside, a vehicle that Chevrolet built to compete directly with the Volkswagen Type 2. Like the VW, the Rampside featured a rear-mounted, air-cooled flat-six engine tucked under the back of the bed. But Chevrolet engineers wanted to solve the issue of a high-load floor, so they created a wildly unique bi-level bed. The rear section over the engine was raised, but the middle section dropped down low. To maximize this, they cut a massive door into the side that folded down. While the built-in side ramp was an ingenious idea for rolling heavy appliances or motorcycles directly into the bed, the Corvair Rampside was a catastrophic failed experiment in overall utility. The bizarre bi-level floor made hauling standard building materials like rigid plywood, long metal pipes, or sheets of drywall incredibly frustrating, as the cargo would sit unevenly across the huge engine hump in the back. Furthermore, the handling of the rear-engine Corvair platform was notoriously tricky, making it deeply unpopular with traditional truck buyers who simply demanded flat, simple steel cargo boxes for real work. Despite being a commercial flop with a very short production run, the Rampside's sheer weirdness has made it highly collectible today. The price shock is absolutely real. While they were practically given away to scrapyards in the 1970s, a clean, functioning Rampside today will easily pull $30,000 to $50,000 from collectors who desperately want the ultimate tailgate party conversation piece. A side ramp is definitely crazy, but our final truck makes all of these look completely normal. It is tiny, it has exactly 3 wheels, and it barely qualifies as a truck. Taking the crown for the absolute most bizarre classic pickup truck you have never seen is the Daihatsu Midget MP5 from the late 1950s and 60s. This Japanese import is a micro truck that looks like it escaped from an amusement park ride. It features a tiny enclosed single-seat cabin, an incredibly small cargo bed, and exactly 3 wheels. Powered by a microscopic air-cooled engine that produced barely 12 horsepower, the Midget was intelligently designed to navigate the incredibly narrow, bomb-damaged alleyways and tight city streets of post-war Japan, where full-size trucks would physically get stuck. While brilliant for its home market, the Daihatsu Midget was a hilariously terrifying failed experiment when a few of them inevitably made their way over to the United States. Attempting to drive this 3-wheeled, ultra-lightweight, painfully slow micro-truck on wide, fast-paced American roads alongside massive V8 sedans and heavy-duty semi-trucks was essentially a total death wish. They possessed absolutely zero safety features, could be blown over by a strong gust of wind or a passing truck, and had a top speed of roughly 40 miles per hour, struggling to safely keep up with any modern traffic. Yet, prepare for the final, most absurd price shock. Because they are so incredibly rare in America, so unbelievably strange to look at, and so charmingly tiny, they have become massive hits in the micro-car collector community. Originally costing literally pennies to build as cheap disposable utility runabouts, A well-preserved Daihatsu Midget MP5 today can easily sell for $15,000 to $25,000. That is an absurd amount of money for what is essentially a street-legal three-wheeled golf cart. It truly proves that weirdness sells. So there you have it, the 10 most bizarre classic pickup trucks to ever hit the American pavement. From massive station wagon tail fins and clever built-in side ramps to terrifying three-wheeled micro-haulers and dangerously unbalanced cab-overs, automotive history is definitely much weirder than we ever imagined. Now it is your turn to join the conversation. If you were forced to daily drive one of these crazy machines on the highway today, which one are you picking? Let me know down in the comments. Subscribe and like for more awesome history. Think your standard pickup truck is big? Think again. Today we are exploring the top 10 absolute biggest pickup trucks in the world ever built. We are talking about towering commercial behemoths, apocalyptic six-wheel monsters, and vehicles so massive they make a Ford F-150 look like a toy. These are street-legal titans that completely dominate the asphalt. Wait until you see the beast sitting at number 1. You literally need a stepladder just to open the door. Smash that subscribe button right now and let us know in the comments, which gigantic truck would you daily drive? Let's begin. Starting off our list at number 10, we have a truck that basically birthed the luxury monster truck craze, the International CXT. Standing for Commercial Extreme Truck, this colossal machine is built directly on a 7300 series severe-duty dump truck chassis. Measuring a staggering 21.5 feet in length and standing over 9 feet tall, it dwarfs absolutely everything else in the grocery store parking lot. Powered by a legendary 7.6-liter inline-six diesel engine, it does not just look like a semi-truck, it has the heart of one. The massive tires are easily chest-high on an average adult. However, driving a commercial dump truck in disguise comes with some hilariously painful daily struggles. The CXT tips the scales at an unbelievable 14,500 pounds when completely empty. Because of its sheer mass and commercial gearing, the fuel economy is nothing short of tragic, averaging somewhere around 8 to 10 miles per gallon. The turning radius is practically the size of a football field. Want to grab a quick coffee at a drive-thru? Forget about it. The CXT will obliterate the height restriction bar. You must plan your routes meticulously to avoid tight city streets. When it comes to the price tag, this level of sheer intimidation does not come cheap. Back in the 2000s when it debuted, the base price hovered around $93,000. But fully loaded with luxury leather, wood trim, and rear seat entertainment, it easily crested $120,000. Today, they are rare collector's items that command massive respect. Driving one guarantees you own the road, but your wallet will definitely feel the pain at the fuel pump. If you think the CXT is a handful, just wait until you see its militarized brother coming up next. Moving to number 9, we introduce the International MXT, the sleeker but equally terrifying sibling of the CXT. Standing for a military extreme truck, one look at this beast tells you exactly why. While it sits slightly lower to the ground, it boasts an incredibly wide, aggressive stance that looks ready to storm a battlefield. Under the hood, you will find a 6-liter V8 diesel engine pumping out 300 horsepower and 530 pound-feet of torque. Visually, the MXT looks like a high-tech armored personnel carrier. The hood alone is so wide you could land a helicopter. Despite its undeniable cool factor, daily driving the MXT introduces a fatal flaw that owners simply cannot escape: its sheer width. Driving the MXT down a standard 2-lane road feels like threading a needle while wearing boxing gloves. You will constantly be checking your side mirrors, praying you do not accidentally push a compact car into a ditch. Parking is a genuine nightmare. You cannot simply pull into a regular spot. You must take up at least 2 spaces. With a ride quality designed to survive explosive blasts, do not expect a smooth highway cruise. You feel every bump. So, what does military-grade street legality cost? When new, the International MXT would set you back anywhere from $89,500 to a staggering $130,000, depending on the armor and luxury options you demanded. It is an incredibly expensive way to terrify your neighbors and dominate local traffic. They are extremely rare to see on public roads today. But what if you want heavy-duty commercial towing capabilities blended with the interior of a private jet? Let me introduce you to the absolute luxury monster waiting for you at number 8. At number 8, we step into the realm of ultra-luxury towing with the Freightliner Sport Chassis P4XL. This is not just a truck, it is a luxury apartment on wheels capable of dragging a house. Built on a business-class chassis, the P4XL is powered by an earth-shaking 8.3-liter diesel engine, delivering 350 horsepower and over 1,000 pound-feet of torque. This truck is so massive that it utilizes a specialized air ride suspension to keep the cabin comfortable. Imagine sitting behind the wheel of a legitimate 18-wheeler, but surrounded by hand-stitched Italian leather and premium noise-canceling cabin insulation. The fatal flaw of the Sport Chassis P4XL lies in its terrifyingly deceptive speed and momentum. When you are wrapped in ultra-luxury and floating on air suspension, it is very easy to forget you are piloting a 14,000-pound missile. Stopping this enormous amount of mass requires serious pre-planning. If someone cuts you off in traffic, slamming on the brakes feels like trying to halt a runaway freight train. Furthermore, any maintenance requires a trip to a commercial semi-truck facility. You cannot simply roll this beast into a local quick lube shop. They would not have a capable lift. To own the absolute king of luxury towing, you need a massive bank account to match its size. The base price for a Freightliner Sport Chassis P4XL routinely exceeds $200,000, and customized variants can easily push past $250,000. It is the ultimate flex for the wealthy equestrian or professional boat owner who needs to haul heavy loads cross-country. However, if you think spending over $200,000 on a commercial truck is crazy, wait until you see the insane custom culture surrounding the legendary pickup truck at number 7. Roaring into the number 7 spot is the undisputed king of custom monster trucks, the Ford F650 Super Duty. Technically classified as a medium-duty commercial vehicle, automotive enthusiasts have completely transformed the F650 into the ultimate status symbol. Underneath that towering hood lies the legendary 6.7-liter Powerstroke V8 diesel engine, capable of moving actual mountains. What makes the F650 so terrifyingly large is the sheer height. With custom suspension lift kits, the roof of this massive truck can easily clear 10 feet. The massive chrome front grille looks exactly like a solid metal wall staring you down. However, the everyday reality of owning a custom F650 is a hilarious mix of awe and utter inconvenience. The most obvious fatal flaw is simply getting inside. If you forget to install motorized drop-down steps, you literally need a ladder to enter the cabin. Imagine trying to look cool on a date, only to rock climb your way into the passenger seat. Additionally, visibility directly in front of the massive hood is essentially zero. You could easily hide a small sports car in the front blind spot, making tight traffic jams a sweat-inducing experience of blind faith and pure terror. The price of joining the exclusive F650 club is incredibly steep. While a bare-bones commercial chassis might start around $65,000, nobody buys an F650 to leave its stock. By the time custom tuning shops add 6-door cabin conversions, chrome exhaust stacks, and massive super single wheels, the final price tag skyrockets well over $150,000. It is a massive financial investment for a vehicle that barely fits on the road. But what if you want a massive truck that actually starred in a Hollywood blockbuster movie? Stick around for the machine at number 6. Landing at number 6 is the GMC Topkick and its identical twin, the Chevrolet Kodiaq C4500. This truck is so inherently aggressive that Michael Bay cast it as the weapon-toting Autobot Ironhide in the Transformers movie franchise. This medium-duty beast shares its DNA with commercial box trucks, but packs a vicious 6.6-liter Duramax V8 engine. The design is unmistakably rugged, featuring a massive fiberglass hood that tips forward like a semi-truck to reveal the engine. It boasts a gross vehicle weight rating exceeding 17,000 pounds. The side view mirrors are practically the size of large flat-screen televisions. Yet, for all its cinematic glory, the Kodiak and Topkick possess a glaring comedic weakness. They ride like an empty dump truck. Because the heavy-duty suspension is designed to haul literal tons of cargo, driving it without a heavy load in the bed will violently rattle your teeth. Going over a simple speed bump at anything faster than a crawl feels like experiencing a localized earthquake. On top of that, the interior is surprisingly basic. You will be bouncing around in a plastic-heavy utilitarian cabin while burning expensive diesel fuel at an incredibly alarming rate every single day. Finding a pristine C4 500 today is quite a challenge since General Motors ended production back in 2009. However, fully custom, well-maintained Ironhide movie replicas can easily command prices upwards of $100,000 on the used market. It is a legendary, bone-shaking brute that turns heads everywhere it goes. But if you think a Hollywood movie truck is wild, you need to prepare yourself. At number 5, we are leaving normal reality behind entirely and entering the apocalypse with a six-wheeled nightmare that looks like it belongs in a science fiction video game. Crashing into the number 5 spot is the wildest, most exotic truck on our list, the Apocalypse Hellfire 6x6. This is not a commercial work truck, it is a custom-built six-wheel drive machine engineered for the end of the world. Built on the frame of a Jeep Gladiator, the mad scientists stretch the chassis, add a proprietary middle axle, and coat the entire exterior in 3-part Kevlar armor. Under the hood, you can opt for a supercharged 6.2-liter Hellcat V8 engine, producing a face-melting 750 horsepower. Sitting on 6 40-inch tires, it drives straight out of a movie. The fatal flaw of the Hellfire 6x6 is exactly what makes it so cool. It is aggressively, absurdly impractical. Trying to park a 6-wheeled Kevlar-coated tank in a modern city is a recipe for a panic attack. The turning radius is absolutely non-existent, and the rear end stretches out so far that parallel parking is mathematically impossible. Furthermore, the constant attention you get is exhausting. You cannot stop at a gas station without a massive crowd of people surrounding the vehicle, taking photos and asking endless questions. It is a rolling spectacle that guarantees absolutely zero personal privacy. Surviving the apocalypse in a 750 horsepower 6x6 requires serious cash. The Apocalypse Hellfire starts around $155,000, and fully loaded Hellcat engine versions can easily smash the $250,000 barrier. It is an astronomical price for a weekend toy, but it absolutely guarantees you rule the road and survive any off-road obstacle. Now let us pivot from 6-wheel fantasy builds back to a traditional 4-wheel setup and take a close look at a factory-backed high-speed off-road titan sitting aggressively at the number 4 spot on our list. Taking the number 4 spot is a truck that combines massive heavy-duty scale with high-speed desert racing performance, the Shelby F250 Super Baja. When the legendary team at Shelby American gets their hands on a Ford Super Duty, the result is a massive, towering off-road weapon. They take the proven 6.7-liter turbo diesel engine, pumping out up to 1,200 pound-feet of torque, and pair it with a custom suspension system. Featuring a premium lift kit and race-adjustable shocks, this truck sits aggressively high on 37-inch mud-terrain tires. The hood scoop sits higher than most sports cars. However, daily driving the Shelby Super Baja reveals a hilarious paradox. It is a highly tuned desert racer that is simply far too huge to fit on most actual off-road trails. If you take this wide-body truck on a standard forest trail, the tree branches will absolutely destroy its beautiful, expensive paint job. It is too wide for narrow paths and way too heavy to glide over soft sand like a lightweight dune buggy. Therefore, most of these incredibly capable monsters live their lives entirely on the pavement, acting as oversized grocery getters with Baja-winning suspension underneath them. The absolute exclusivity and high-speed performance of the Shelby name always come at a premium. To get a Super Baja, you must first purchase a brand-new high-trim Ford F250 and then pay Shelby roughly $125,000 just for the conversion package. That puts the total price tag dangerously close to $200,000 for a truck you might be far too scared to ever scratch. But what if you want massive scale straight from the factory showroom without needing an aftermarket tuner? Enter the incredibly luxurious and gigantic dually waiting at number 3. Coming in at number 3 is the ultimate expression of factory-built heavy-duty luxury, the Chevrolet Silverado 3500 HD High Country Dually. While it does not have a commercial chassis, modern one-ton dually trucks have grown to absolute gargantuan proportions. Equipped with the latest 6.6-liter Duramax V8, this truck pushes 470 horsepower and an earth-moving 975 pound-feet of torque. What makes this truck so intimidating is its incredible width. Thanks to the dual rear wheels, the hips stretch over 8 feet wide. The massive chrome grille looks like a towering skyscraper driving down the highway. The fatal flaw of the modern dually is dealing with its colossal rear end. Driving this massive truck through a fast food drive-through lane is an extreme sport. You will constantly be sweating, checking your side mirrors to make sure those massive rear fenders are not scraping against the concrete barriers. Automatic car washes are strictly off limits. The dually hips are simply too wide to fit on the mechanical tracks. You are doomed to hand-washing acres of sheet metal every weekend. It is designed to tow heavy yachts, but it gets completely defeated by a narrow coffee shop lane. Because it comes fully loaded straight from the Chevrolet factory, you get cutting-edge technology and a leather-wrapped interior that rivals high-end German sedans. A fully loaded High Country dually will easily cost over $90,000 before dealer markups are even applied. It is huge, it is incredibly luxurious, and it represents the absolute peak of modern consumer towing capacity. However, this beautiful factory behemoth is really just a warm-up for the incredibly unique commercial pickup hybrid that is waiting to tear up the asphalt at the number 2 spot on our massive list today. At number 2, we have a fascinating and massive hybrid, the International CV515 4x4. This incredible machine is the direct result of a joint venture between International Trucks and General Motors, essentially creating a bridge between a hardcore commercial work truck and a comfortable consumer pickup. Powered by a heavy-duty variant of the 6.6-liter Duramax diesel engine, the CV515 features a forward-tilting commercial hood, giving you unhindered access to the engine bay. Sitting on a heavy-duty straight rail frame, its sheer height and rugged boxy aesthetic makes standard full-size pickup trucks look incredibly fragile and weak by comparison. The hilariously frustrating part of owning a CV515 is its severe identity crisis. Because it essentially uses a Chevrolet Silverado cab bolted onto a rigid commercial chassis, your passengers will expect a smooth, quiet ride. Instead, they are met with the harsh, unforgiving reality of a Class 5 commercial suspension. Furthermore, the truck is notoriously loud. Without the heavy sound-deadening insulation found in luxury trucks, the roar of the diesel engine and the whine of the heavy-duty transmission will dominate every single conversation inside the cabin. It is a blue-collar workhorse masquerading in a slightly polished business suit. Pricing for the International CV515 is highly variable because it is sold primarily as a chassis cab, meaning you have to pay a custom outfitter to build a specific bed for it. By the time you purchase the 4x4 chassis and add a custom hauler bed alongside a luxury interior conversion, the total price easily crosses the $100,000 mark. It is a massive, serious machine meant for extreme workloads and long highway hauls. But finally, it is time for the undisputed heavyweight king of luxury pickup giants to claim the top spot on our list. Finally, taking the number 1 spot as the ultimate, biggest, and most luxurious consumer pickup truck on the planet, the Ford F450 Super Duty Limited. This is the absolute pinnacle of what you can buy from a dealership without a commercial driver's license. Underneath its aluminum alloy body is a high-output 6.7-liter Powerstroke V8, generating a mind-bending 500 horsepower and 1,200 pound-feet of torque. This truck boasts a maximum towing capacity of 40,000 pounds. Featuring a wide-track front axle and 19.5-inch commercial wheels, it is a chrome-covered titan that rules the fast lane. The fatal flaw of the F450 Limited is the crushing anxiety of driving a vehicle that costs more than some houses, while constantly dealing with commercial vehicle dimensions. You are piloting a vehicle that is over 22 feet long and 8 feet wide, yet the interior is covered in delicate two-tone premium leather and massaging seats. You are absolutely terrified of getting a single scratch on the gorgeous exterior, yet forced to navigate tight parking lots meant for compact cars. Taking this luxury suite off-road or to a dirty construction site feels like committing an automotive crime. With a base price starting well over $100,000 for the fully loaded limited trim, the Ford F450 Super Duty is the undeniable king of the road. It flawlessly combines the sheer size and raw towing capability of a commercial hauler with the advanced technology and plush comfort of a high-end luxury limousine. It is, without a shadow of a doubt, the ultimate street-legal behemoth. You sit high above standard traffic, commanding absolute respect wherever you drive. If you want the biggest, baddest luxury truck money can buy right off the lot, this is your answer. From the commercial-grade towering height of the International CXT to the apocalyptic six-wheel madness of the Hellfire and the ultimate luxury of the Ford F450, these massive machines prove that on the American road, bigger is always better. The sheer scale and hilarious daily driving struggles make these trucks absolute legends. Which of these gargantuan monsters would you choose to daily drive? Let us know in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you next time. Stop scrolling. Everything you know about trucks is wrong. We aren't talking about Fords or Chevys here. Imagine a truck that looks like a spaceship, another that drives while you stand up, and a military beast that actually swims through rivers. These aren't sci-fi movies. These are real monsters from history that defy every law of physics and logic. Why would anyone build a truck with only 3 wheels, or one that bends in the middle? Today we are exposing 10 of the most bizarre, dangerous, and mind-blowing trucks ever made. You need to watch until the very last second to believe they exist. Hit that subscribe button right now and do not look away, because this ride is about to get extremely weird, and trust me, you are not ready for the 6-wheeled nightmare waiting at number 1. We start our journey in post-war Japan with a vehicle that looks less like a truck and more like a rolling log. Meet the Mazda T2000. When you first look at it, your brain struggles to comprehend the proportions. It is incredibly long, with the longest version stretching over 20 feet in length, yet it balances precariously on just 3 wheels. This wasn't a mistake, it was a necessity. In the tight, narrow streets of recovering Japan, maneuverability was king. The 3-wheel configuration allowed for a much tighter turning radius than any 4-wheeler could dream of, making it the ultimate urban workhorse. Don't let the quirky tricycle look fool you. This machine was an absolute beast in its category. Under the cabin, or rather inside the cabin with you, sat a robust 121 cubic inch, 2.0 liter, water-cooled 4-cylinder engine. This was a significant jump in power compared to its smaller predecessors. The T2000 was the undisputed king of the auto rickshaw class, capable of hauling a payload of roughly 4,400 lbs, 2 tons. It could hit speeds of around 60 mph, which, given that you are balancing on one front wheel, must have felt absolutely terrifying. It was heavy-duty hauling with motorcycle dynamics. Driving the Mazda T2000 was an experience completely unique to this era. The cabin was sparse, loud, and offered zero crash protection, but it provided an unobstructed view of the road because you were sitting directly on top of the front wheel. It represents a specific moment in history where utility completely trumped aesthetics. While they look alien to us now, in the 1960s and early 70s, these blue giants were building the infrastructure of a nation. Today, seeing one is a rare treat, a reminder of when Mazda was building the backbone of industry before they became famous for sports cars. Crossing the Atlantic to the United Kingdom, we find the Scammell Scarab, a vehicle with a name as distinctive as its shape. Developed in 1948, the Scarab was designed to be the successor to the literal horse-drawn carts still used in British rail yards. The engineers needed a mechanical replacement that could maneuver exactly like a horse. The result was this snub-nosed, three-wheeled tractor unit. With a payload capacity ranging from 6,700 to 13,000 lbs depending on the model, it was a serious industrial tool packaged in a toy-like body, dominating the narrow alleyways of London. The true magic of the Scarab lay in its front wheel configuration. It could rotate a full 360 degrees, allowing the truck to spin within its own length. Imagine the utility of that in a crowded city center. You could practically parallel park it sideways. The cabin was mounted directly over the engine, usually a side-valve gas engine or a Perkins diesel, which meant the driver was intimately acquainted with the heat and noise. It wasn't built for driver comfort. It was built to move freight from trains to local businesses as efficiently as physically possible. What makes the Scarab truly bizarre to modern eyes is its coupling system. It used an innovative automatic coupling gear that allowed the driver to hook up a trailer without ever leaving the cab, a feature that was revolutionary for driver efficiency at the time. Despite its somewhat comical appearance, the Scarab was incredibly durable. Thousands were produced, and they remained in active service well into the 1960s. Watching a Scarab in motion is like watching a dance. It scurries around with an agility that defies its industrial purpose, a brilliantly British solution to a logistical problem. Now we leave the realm of utility and enter the mind of a mad genius. Luigi Colani was not a truck manufacturer. He was a visionary industrial designer who believed that nature held the perfect shapes. He detested the boxy, brick-like shape of modern semi-trucks, arguing that they were aerodynamic disasters that wasted fuel. So, starting in the late 70s, he created a series of concept trucks, most notably the Colani 2001, based on heavy-duty Mercedes-Benz chassis. These weren't just drawings, they were fully functional prototypes that looked like they drove straight off the set of a sci-fi blockbuster. The design is absolutely stunning and shocking. The driver's cabin looks like the cockpit of a fighter jet or the eye of a giant insect. It is circular, featuring a massive round windshield with a rotating three-blade wiper that looks like a propeller. The entire front end is sculpted to slice through the air, claiming to reduce fuel consumption by up to 30% at highway speeds. The driver sat high up in a central position, surrounded by glass, piloting the vehicle more than driving it. It was organic design, bio-design, applied to heavy industry in a way no one had ever dared before. However, despite their futuristic looks and proven aerodynamic efficiency, the industry never adopted them. Why? Because they were impractical for everything else. The bizarre, elongated nose reduced the legal length available for cargo, made engine access a nightmare for mechanics, and was incredibly expensive to manufacture. Trucking companies wanted standardized boxes for maximum profit, not spaceships. Yet, the Colani trucks remain some of the most fascinating vehicles ever seen on a highway. They stand as a testament to what trucking could look like if we prioritized wind resistance over boxy efficiency. Germany in the late 1940s was rebuilding from rubble, and they needed simple, reliable transport. Enter the Tempo Matador. At first glance, the Matador looks somewhat like a Volkswagen bus that is melted in the sun. It has a low, droopy face with headlights that seem to be staring sadly at the ground. But the weirdest part of the Matador isn't its looks, it's the engine. This was one of the very few trucks to use the Volkswagen Beetle's 1100cc, approx 67 cubic inch engine, but it placed it in the front, driving the front wheels. This front-wheel drive, FWD layout was actually a stroke of genius for a utility vehicle. Because there was no driveshaft running to the back wheels, the cargo bed could be extremely low and flat, making it incredibly easy to load heavy goods by hand. With only 25 horsepower on tap, it wasn't going anywhere fast. Top speed was barely 50 mph, but it could carry a surprising amount of weight. It was the perfect delivery vehicle for the narrow cobblestone streets of Europe. However, this success created a rivalry with Volkswagen itself. Volkswagen realized the Tempo Matador was a direct competitor to their own upcoming Type 2 transporter, the VW bus. So they cut off the supply of engines. Tempo was forced to scramble and switch to other engines, primarily Austin motors, which changed the design of the front end. But the original VW-powered Matadors remain the holy grail for collectors. The driving position is bizarrely forward, sitting right over the front axle with a horizontal steering wheel. It looks friendly, harmless, and slightly confused, a fascinating footnote in history where the VW engine almost became the standard for front-wheel drive trucks. If you thought the Mazda T2000 was the only three-wheeler on this list, think again. Germany had its own fascination with the tripod layout, and the Goliath Goalie was the last of its kind. Produced by the Borgward Group in the late 1950s, the Goalie was a desperate attempt to keep the cheap three-wheeled commercial vehicle alive. Unlike its chain-driven predecessors, the Goalie featured a more advanced shaft drive system, sending power to the front wheel. The design is stark, utilitarian, and dangerously simple, looking like a metal box balanced on a tricycle. The Goalie was powered by a tiny 30-cubic-inch, 500cc, two-cylinder, two-stroke engine. If you know engines, you know that means blue smoke and a very distinct ring-ding-ding noise echoing through the streets. With about 15 horsepower, it had a payload of roughly 2,000 lbs, which is impressive relative to its size, but stability was always a concern. While it was fine for low-speed city deliveries, taking a corner too fast in a fully loaded Goliath Goalie was a recipe for a rollover. It was the budget option for the small business owner who couldn't quite afford a four-wheeled van. Despite its limitations, the Goalie was surprisingly popular for a short time due to its low cost and tax benefits. But as the German economic miracle took hold, people wanted real cars, not unstable three-wheelers. The Goalie became a symbol of the lean years. Looking at one today with its single front wheel tucked under a narrow nose and its wide cargo bed, it looks precarious. It serves as a reminder of how simple a vehicle can be and still be considered a truck. It is minimalism taken to the extreme, a shaft-driven relic of a desperate time. Let's head back to Japan to meet a truck that is as adorable as it is functional, the Daihatsu Midget. Specifically, the early DK models launched in 1957. If you have ever seen a movie set in 1950s Tokyo, you have seen these zipping around. The Midget was designed to fit into a specific tax class that made it accessible to practically everyone. It is tiny, so small that a large American driver might actually struggle to fit inside. We are talking about a total weight of just over 1,000 lbs and a payload capacity of around 600 to 800 lbs. It was the definition of light duty. The most shocking feature of the early DKA version was the steering. It didn't have a steering wheel, it had motorcycle handlebars. The cabin was essentially a glass and steel bubble built around a scooter. It had one headlight in the center on the earliest drafts, later moving to two bug eyes, giving it the look of a startled frog. Power came from a tiny 15-cubic-inch 250C two-stroke engine. It wasn't fast, topping out at about 40 mph, and it certainly wasn't safe by modern standards, but it was exactly what Japan needed to bridge the gap between bicycles and full-size trucks. The Daihatsu Midget became a cult icon representing the democratization of logistics. You didn't need a commercial license or a lot of money to own one. It is the spiritual ancestor of the modern K-truck, but with way more character. The charm of the Midget lies in its honesty. It doesn't pretend to be tough, it pretends to be helpful. Driving one today is a terrifyingly fun experience. You are inches from the ground, surrounded by thin metal, buzzing along like an angry hornet. It is impossible not to smile when you see one, proving that good things really do come in small packages. When you think of Jeep, you think of the Wrangler or the old CJ models. But in the late 1950s, Jeep decided to get weird with the Forward Control series, and the FC-150 is the strangest of the bunch. The idea was to maximize cargo space on a short chassis. So they took the frame of a standard CJ5 Jeep and placed the cab famously on top of the engine, right at the very front. The result is a truck with a wheelbase of just 81 inches, that is shorter than a modern Honda Civic, yet it carried a full-sized pickup bed. The proportions of the FC-150 are mind-boggling. It looks like a pug dog, flat-faced, top-heavy, and ready to fight. This design gave it incredible off-road maneuverability because there was virtually no front overhang. You could approach a vertical rock wall and your tires would hit it before the bumper did. However, this design came with a terrifying drawback. Because all the weight was in the front, if you braked hard while going down a steep hill with an empty bed, the rear wheels could actually lift off the ground. The truck was known to do stoppies, which is not what you want in a utility vehicle. Despite the scary handling quirks, the FC-150 is a marvel of packaging. Jeep even had to add a heavy cast-iron weight to the rear bumper just to keep the back wheels on the ground. The view from the driver's seat is commanding. You see nothing but the road directly beneath your feet. It is a masterpiece of industrial design by Brooks Stevens, distinct from anything else on the American road. Today, the Jeep FC-150 is a collector's dream, a rugged, quirky 4x4 that proves Jeep wasn't afraid to think outside the box, even if the result was a little tipsy. If you have ever been to a vintage food truck festival, you have probably seen a Citroën Type H. But don't let its modern hipster popularity fool you. This is a serious piece of industrial history dating back to 1947. The first thing you notice is the skin. The entire body is made of corrugated steel panels, looking exactly like the Junkers airplanes of W. Poo. This wasn't for style. The ridges added immense strength to the thin metal sheets without adding extra weight. It was cheap, strong, and ugly beautiful, staying in production for 34 years with minimal changes. The Type H was revolutionary beneath the skin. It featured a unitary body with no separate frame, four-wheel independent suspension, and most importantly, front-wheel drive. This meant the floor in the back was completely flat and incredibly low to the ground, just 13 inches high. You could walk in and out without climbing, standing fully upright inside thanks to the 6-foot ceiling height in many models. It was a rolling box of maximum efficiency. The pig-nose front end, with the engine protruding forward into the cabin, gave it a distinctive silhouette that became a French icon. Driving a Type H is a physical workout. The steering is heavy, the gearbox is tricky, and the engine, usually a 116 cubic inch 1.9L gas unit, is loud. Top speed is theoretically 60 mph, but you would need a lot of courage and earplugs to sustain it. Yet it is virtually indestructible. It was the van of the French police, the post office, and the local baker. It is a vehicle that prioritizes function over form so heavily that it actually circles back to being a work of art. The tube, as it is affectionately called, is weird, corrugated, and utterly unmistakable. For many Americans growing up in the mid-20th century, the sound of the Divco was the sound of mourning. Divco, Detroit Industrial Vehicle Company, built trucks specifically for one purpose: multi-stop delivery. They are most famous as milk trucks. The design is iconic: a rounded snub-nosed hood and a smooth, almost Art Deco body. But the weirdest feature of the Divco was how you drove it. These trucks were designed for extreme efficiency, allowing the driver to operate the vehicle while standing up. Yes, standing up. They featured a complex control system that allowed the milkmen to drive from a standing position using a throttle and brake mounted on the steering column or floor. This meant they could hop in, drive to the next house, and hop out without constantly sitting down and getting up, saving time and energy over hundreds of stops. The doors were bifold or sliding, allowing them to stay open while driving. The standard engine was typically a Hercules or Continental 4-cylinder, geared incredibly low. Top speed was irrelevant. These trucks lived their lives at 15 to 20 mph. The Divco represents a hyper-specialized era of automotive design. It didn't care about highway travel. It cared about stop-and-go efficiency. They were ubiquitous in American suburbs for decades, delivering milk, bread, and laundry. Today, their unique shape makes them popular as hot rods and promotional vehicles, but seeing one restored to its original specification highlights just how specialized it was. It's a truck that asks the question, why sit down when you have work to do? It is a fascinating slice of Americana that has largely disappeared along with the milkman himself. We end our list with perhaps the most capable and most hated vehicle in U.S. military history, the M561, better known as the Gamma Goat. Developed for the Vietnam War, the military needed a truck that could go anywhere, and they meant anywhere. The solution was a six-wheel drive, 6C6 vehicle with an articulated joint in the middle. The cab and the trailer were permanently connected, but they could twist independently, allowing the wheels to stay on the ground over the roughest terrain imaginable. It looks like two vehicles smashed together, but it is one continuous machine. The Goat name was well-earned because it could climb over rocks and wade through mud that would stop a Jeep dead. But here is the crazy part. It was fully amphibious. It had an aluminum body and could float, propelled in the water by its wheels at a speed of roughly 2 to 3 mph. On land, it could hit 55 mph, powered by a Detroit diesel 3 to 53 two-stroke engine. This engine was the source of much hatred. It was located right behind the driver's head and was so deafeningly loud that drivers had to wear hearing protection just to operate it without suffering permanent hearing loss. The steering was also bizarre. It featured four-wheel steering where the front and rear axles turned in opposite directions, making it handle strangely on pavement. It was complex, noisy, and required constant maintenance. The soldiers hated it because it was uncomfortable. The mechanics hated it because it was hard to fix. But in terms of pure weird engineering, it is a masterpiece, an articulated, swimming, six-wheeled, screaming banshee of a truck. There has never been anything like the Gamma Goat before or since, cementing its place as the weirdest military truck ever made. We have seen some truly crazy things today. From the wobbly three-wheelers of Japan to the swimming military goats of America, these 10 trucks prove that automotive history is anything but boring. It was a time when engineers took risks and built machines that prioritized function over form in the weirdest ways possible. Which one was your favorite? Did you love the futuristic Kalani or the standing drive Divco? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into mechanical history. Thanks for watching. Forget everything you know about trucks. We are not talking about your grandfather's pickup. We are talking about mechanical freaks of nature. Have you ever seen a truck that walks over rocks like a spider? Or a van with a two-stroke engine that smokes like a chimney? From Cold War secrets to three-wheeled oddities, these are the 10 most bizarre classic trucks that history tried to forget. These machines defy logic, physics, and sanity. You need to stay until the very last second because the engineering gets crazier with every entry. If you love discovering the weirdest machines on Earth, smash that subscribe button right now. Let's dive into the madness. We are kicking off this list with an American oddity from the late 1950s that looks like it is wearing a pair of extra glasses. Meet the International Harvester Sightliner. At first glance, you might think the designers made a terrible mistake. Why are there two extra windows cut into the bodywork right below the windshield? This wasn't a design flaw, it was a radical attempt to solve a major safety problem. In the tight city streets of the 1950s, drivers in high-cab over trucks could not see pedestrians or small cars directly in front of their massive steel bumpers. Mechanically, the Sightliner was an absolute beast tailored for the U.S. highway system. It was typically powered by the massive V401 or V549 gasoline V8 engines, churning out serious horsepower for its time. Officially known as the ACO series, its distinct compact design was a direct response to strict length regulations. The Sightliner measured only 48 inches from the bumper to the back of the cab. This ultra-short length allowed trucking companies to haul longer trailers while staying legally within the overall length limits of various states. It was a brilliant, albeit strange, example of government regulations dictating automotive design. However, the Sightliner did not stick around forever, and there were reasons for its disappearance. Drivers often complained about the excessive heat in the cabin because they were sitting directly on top of a roaring V8 engine with lots of glass letting in the sun. As length regulations relaxed and cab designs improved, the need for those lower sight windows vanished. Today, seeing a sightliner at a classic truck show is an incredibly rare treat. It stands as a testament to a time when American engineers were not afraid to cut holes in a truck just to see if it worked. Crossing the Atlantic Ocean and the Iron Curtain, we find the Barcus B1000. While the Volkswagen bus was becoming a symbol of freedom and surfing in the West, the Barcus was the undisputed workhorse of East Germany. Produced from 1961 all the way until 1991, this van platform did absolutely everything behind the Berlin Wall. It served as an ambulance, a police van, a flatbed truck, and a delivery vehicle. Unlike the rear-engine VW, the Barcus utilized a front-wheel drive layout. This was actually revolutionary for a commercial van, allowing for a remarkably low and flat loading floor for easy cargo access. The engine of the Barcus is where things get truly bizarre by modern American standards. It was powered by a tiny two-stroke three-cylinder engine derived from the Wartburg car. Yes, a smoky two-stroke engine in a one-ton truck. This meant you had to mix oil with the gas, and it produced that signature ring-ding sound and a cloud of blue smoke. With only about 45 horsepower on tap, it was not going anywhere fast, but it was surprisingly torque-heavy. If the engine failed, the design was so simple that two people could literally lift the engine out of the chassis by hand. Despite its underpowered nature, the Barcus B1000 is a cult icon today, representing the ingenuity of engineers working with limited resources. It survived for decades with almost no significant changes, serving as a time capsule of communist engineering. While it lacked the comfort of American vans, it was incredibly durable and easy to fix on the side of the road. Today, collectors import them to the US as unique show cars. Driving one requires patience and a tolerance for noise, but it guarantees you will be the only one at the car meet with a two-stroke van. When the Swedish military needs a truck, they do not mess around with weak designs. Enter the Volvo Laplander series, specifically the C303 model. At first glance, it looks like a brick on wheels. It is arguably one of the boxiest vehicles ever designed. Often nicknamed the Valp or Puppy in its earlier versions, this machine is an absolute monster off-road. It was explicitly designed to transport troops and equipment through the deep snow, frozen lakes, and dense forests of Scandinavia. It is high, narrow, and looks like it might tip over, but its stability is engineering magic. The secret weapon of the Laplander is its portal axles. In a normal American pickup truck, the axle creates a low point in the center of the vehicle that can easily get stuck on rocks or stumps. On the Laplander, the axle tube sits nearly 15 inches above the ground, and a set of gears in the wheel hub transfers the power down to the tire. This gives the truck massive ground clearance without needing monster truck tires. Combined with vacuum-operated differential lockers that can be engaged on the fly, the Laplander can crawl over rocks that would swallow a Jeep Wrangler whole. The driving position is also unique and terrifying. You sit forward of the front axle, meaning you are essentially the bumper. When descending a steep hill, you feel like you are diving face-first into the ground. The Volvo Laplander has gained a legendary status among off-road enthusiasts worldwide for its durability and capability. While they are rare in the United States, they are highly sought after by extreme off-roaders who want a vehicle that is practically unstoppable right out of the factory. It proves that a box on wheels can be the ultimate adventure machine. During World War II, the British Army desperately needed a new general service truck, and Bedford answered the call with the QL. Known affectionately to soldiers as Queen Lizzie, this was Bedford's first ever commercial vehicle designed with four-wheel drive. Over 52,000 were built between 1941 and 1945 to support the Allied war effort. The most striking feature of the QL is its height. The cab sits incredibly high up, perched directly on top of the engine. Climbing into the driver's seat is more like ascending a ladder into a treehouse than getting into a standard military truck. This forward control design maximized cargo space on a relatively short wheelbase, allowing it to carry a 3-ton payload, but it made for a unique driving experience. Because you sat so high and the truck was relatively narrow, the sensation of body roll in corners was absolutely terrifying. Drivers reported that it felt like the truck was going to tip over at any moment, although it rarely did thanks to a heavy chassis. The gearbox was also notorious. Shifting gears required a specific rhythm and a lot of muscle, earning the respect and frustration of thousands of Allied soldiers. Despite its quirky ergonomics, the Bedford QL was incredibly robust and versatile. It carried troops, acted as a fuel tanker, served as a mobile office, and even towed anti-tank guns across North Africa and Europe. It represents the stiff upper lip of British wartime engineering, maybe not comfortable, maybe a bit odd-looking, but it absolutely got the job done when it mattered most. Many survived the war and were converted for civilian use, serving on farms for decades. It is a tall, awkward, but heroic piece of history. If the Bedford QL is a soldier, the Scammell Explorer is a tank in disguise. Built in the 1950s for the British Army, this 6x6 recovery vehicle is a mechanical masterpiece of brute force. It was designed to rescue other tanks and heavy trucks that had gotten stuck or broken down in the field. Visually, it is intimidating, with a massive protruding radiator grille and a purposeful, heavy-set stance. It weighs over 20 tons fully loaded and looks like it could smash through a brick wall without even scratching the paint. The real magic of the Explorer lies underneath the chassis, specifically in the rear suspension. It uses a walking beam system instead of standard springs. The rear wheels are attached to a massive beam that pivots in the center, allowing for insane articulation. One rear wheel can be 2 feet up in the air while the other is buried in a ditch, and both will still have traction. Powering this beast was the legendary Gardner 6LW diesel engine. It wasn't fast. Top speed was maybe 25 miles per hour downhill, but the torque was earth-shattering, allowing it to tow over 100 tons using low gears. Watching a Scammell Explorer move off-road is hypnotic. The rear wheels articulate and crawl over obstacles like a giant mechanical insect. It is a reminder of a time when trucks were over-engineered to last forever rather than designed for comfort or speed. The transmission gate was also gated, requiring skill to navigate, and the steering was unassisted, demanding serious arm strength from the driver. Today, these giants are kept alive by dedicated enthusiasts who appreciate the raw, unfiltered mechanical connection between man and machine. Is it a truck? Is it a go-kart? Is it a table with wheels? It is the M274 truck platform utility, better known to U.S. servicemen as the mechanical mule. Introduced in the late 1950s and used extensively during the Vietnam War, this is the definition of minimalism. The U.S. military wanted a vehicle that could carry heavy loads over rough terrain but was light enough to be dropped by parachute or carried underneath a helicopter. The result was literally a magnesium platform with 4 wheels and an engine underneath, weighing only about 900 pounds. There is no cab, there are no doors, there is not even a real seat, just a flimsy wire basket for the driver. But the engineering is brilliant. The mule features 4-wheel drive and, amazingly, 4-wheel steering. This allowed it to crab walk diagonally and make unbelievably tight turns in the jungle. Even stranger, the steering column could be unlatched and tilted forward to extend the wheelbase virtually. This allowed the driver to walk or crawl in front of the moving vehicle while controlling it, perfect for when you needed to use the mule as a shield in combat. Despite looking like a toy, the mule could carry more than its own weight in cargo, often hauling up to 1,000 pounds of ammo across terrain that would stop a jeep. It carried supplies, mounted recoilless rifles for fire support, and evacuated the wounded. It was eventually phased out in the 1980s for the Humvee, but nothing since has matched its sheer utility-to-weight ratio. It proves that you do not need complex computers or armor plating to be an effective military vehicle. Sometimes you just need a flat surface and 4 moving wheels. The Dutch are famous for their endless battle against water, but with the DAF YA-126 they decided to fight the terrain itself. Built in the 1950s as a weapons carrier for the Royal Netherlands Army, This truck looks fairly normal from the top down. However, underneath the chassis, it is an engineering freak of nature. Most 404 trucks use a drive shaft down the middle connected to axles at the front and back. The engineers at DAF said no to that conventional wisdom. Instead, they utilized a unique H-drive system derived from armored car technology. In the H-drive layout, there is no differential in the middle of the axle that could get snagged on rocks. Instead, the drive shafts run along the sides of the chassis, powering the wheels through a complex series of gears. But the weirdest feature is definitely the spare wheels. You will notice 2 spare tires mounted on the sides just behind the front cab. These aren't just for storage. They are actually mounted on free-rotating hubs that hang lower than the chassis. If the truck high centers on a ridge or a bump, these spare wheels act as landing gear, rolling the truck over the obstacle. This brilliant design made the YA-126 nearly unstoppable in uneven terrain. It could drag a 1-ton payload through mud that would stop a tank. It's a level of mechanical complexity that you just do not see anymore because it is incredibly expensive to build and maintain. But for a specific moment in history, DAF created the ultimate off-road spider. Today they are popular among European collectors, but finding parts for that insane drivetrain in the United States is a nightmare, making them a rare and fascinating sight on American soil. After World War II, Japan needed to rebuild its economy from the ground up. The streets were narrow, resources were scarce, and businesses needed a cheap way to move goods. Enter the K-truck revolution, led by the charming Mazda K360. Launched in 1959, this 3-wheeled truck looks less like a utility vehicle and more like a cartoon character come to life. With its rounded bathtub styling, bug-eye headlights, and friendly 2-tone paint jobs, it is undeniably adorable. But do not underestimate it. This little machine helped rebuild the Japanese economy. The K360 was powered by a tiny 3556 EC V-twin air-cooled engine mounted behind the cabin, the same spot you would find an engine in a supercar, technically making it a mid-engine vehicle. It produced a modest 11 to 16 horsepower depending on the year. Driving it was an exercise in balance. With only one wheel at the front, the turning radius was incredibly tight, making it perfect for the alleyways of Tokyo. However, take a corner too fast with an empty bed, and things could get tippy very quickly, requiring a steady hand on the horizontal steering wheel. The cabin was tiny, barely fitting 2 adults comfortably, but it was a step up from a bicycle or a motorcycle. Over 280,000 units were produced before production ended in 1969, replaced by 4-wheeled trucks. Today, the K360 is a rare collector's item, celebrated not for its power but for its style and historical significance. It proved that you do not need big horsepower to make a big impact. While Americans were driving massive V8s, this little tricycle was carrying the weight of a nation's recovery on its small bed. You know the Vespa scooter, the symbol of Italian style, romance, and freedom. But did you know it has a hard-working brother? This is the Vespa Ape, pronounced ape, which means bee in Italian, just as Vespa means wasp. Conceived by Enrico Piaggio right after the war, the idea was simple. Take the front half of a scooter and weld a cargo box to the back half. It was the elegant solution for Italian merchants who could not afford a full-size truck, but needed to haul wine, cheese, and construction materials through ancient, narrow streets. The Ape is primitive but effective. The driver sits on a saddle, in early models, or a simple bench, steering with handlebars just like a motorcycle. The engine is a small displacement 2-stroke, often ranging from 50 cc to roughly 200 cc. It buzzes angrily as it carries loads that look physically impossible for its size, often hauling up to 1,000 pounds or more. Over the decades, the Ape evolved, gaining a proper enclosed cab to protect the driver from the rain, but the basic 3-wheel architecture has remained the same for over 70 years. It is one of the longest-running production vehicles in history because nothing else can do exactly what it does. It can squeeze through gaps that would stop a bicycle. In Italy, seeing an old man navigating a vertical cobblestone hill in a rusted ape loaded with firewood is a common sight. Recently, they have become trendy in the US as mobile coffee bars or Prosecco vans at weddings. It is the ultimate fusion of motorcycle freedom and truck utility, proving that 3 wheels are sometimes better than 4. We end our list with one more survivor from East Germany, the multicar M22. While the Barcus was the delivery van, the multicar was the heavy-duty industrial worker, shrunk down to miniature size. Produced in the 1960s and 70s, the M22 looks like someone put a full-size dump truck into a shrinking machine. It has a tiny single-person enclosed cab sitting right next to a noisy engine. It was ubiquitous in Eastern Bloc factories, airports, and construction sites, handling the dirty work that required a compact footprint. The M22 was powered by an air-cooled V-twin diesel engine producing about 15 horsepower. It was definitely not built for speed. Its top speed was barely 15 to 18 miles per hour. It was built for torque and versatility. The multi in the name referred to the various attachments available: dump beds, snowplows, street sweepers, and ladders. Despite its small size, it could carry a payload of nearly 2 tons, which is mind-blowing for a vehicle of its dimensions. The controls were cramped, and the ride was harsh, but it never quit. Amazingly, unlike many other East German manufacturers that vanished after unification, the multicar company survived the fall of the Berlin Wall and is still in business today, making modern utility vehicles. But the M22 remains the classic icon, a noisy, smoky, shaking, but incredibly reliable little worker. It is a favorite among collectors of oddball machinery who enjoy driving a truck that tops out at the speed of a bicycle but can pull a house. It is the perfect end to our list of weird wonders. From the window-heavy Sightliner to the 3-wheeled wonders, these 10 trucks prove that automotive history is absolutely insane. We have seen the wildest designs solving the toughest problems. Now it is your turn. Which mechanical oddity was your favorite? Would you pick the rock-crawling Volvo or the tiny tricycle? Comment down below right now. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next video. Thanks for watching. Have you ever seen a truck shaped like a giant hot dog speeding down the highway? Or a military beast so thirsty it consumes fuel faster than you can pour it? Welcome to the wild side of automotive history. Today we are not looking at your average pickup trucks like the Ford F-150. We are diving into the strange, the legendary, and the absolutely bizarre. From the frozen wastelands of the Soviet Union to the sunny streets of America, we have hunted down 10 classic trucks that defy explanation. Some were built to save nations, while others were just crazy experiments gone wrong. Buckle up, because you won't believe these machines actually exist. We begin our journey with a true war hero, a machine that proves engineering knows no borders, the Studebaker US-6. While the name sounds as American as apple pie, this truck became an absolute legend on the other side of the world, in the Soviet Union. Produced between 1941 and 1945 by the Studebaker Corporation in Indiana, this 6x6 behemoth was designed to conquer the toughest terrains imaginable. While the U.S. Army preferred other trucks, the US-6 became the backbone of the Red Army during World War II, proving that sometimes a product finds its true home far away from where it was born. What made the US-6 so special was its rugged simplicity. It was powered by the Hercules JXD 6-cylinder gasoline engine, producing roughly 95 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but combined with its robust transmission and a payload capacity of 5,000 pounds off-road, it was unstoppable. The Soviets loved it because, unlike their domestic trucks at the time, the Studebaker was reliable and could handle the brutal Russian winter without freezing up. It featured a distinctively tough design with metal grills and a high stance, allowing it to wade through deep mud and snow that would trap lesser vehicles. However, the most iconic role of this truck was serving as the primary platform for the terrifying Katyusha rocket launchers. When you see historical footage of rockets firing into the German lines, creating a deafening noise that terrified enemy troops, they are likely launching from the back of an American Studebaker. Over 200,000 of these were sent to the USSR under the Lend-Lease program. It is a strange twist of history that an American truck became the symbol of Soviet military might. The US-6 was tough, simple, and rugged, a perfect start to our list of legends. If the Studebaker was the hero of the war, the Ural 375D was the monster of the Cold War. Entering production in 1961, this Soviet general-purpose truck was designed with one goal: to go where no roads existed. The Ural 375D is a 66 off-road beast that looks like it could smash through a brick wall without a scratch. With a curb weight of over 18,000 pounds, it is a massive piece of iron. Its aggressive, boxy nose and high ground clearance make it instantly recognizable as a symbol of Soviet heavy industry and military might. The heart of this giant is a massive 7.0-liter V8 gasoline engine, the ZIL 375, and this is where things get crazy. This engine was derived from a luxury limousine design, meaning it required high-octane fuel, a rarity in the military. But its biggest problem is its legendary thirst. This truck is one of the least fuel-efficient vehicles ever made. In rough terrain, consumption could reach nearly 2.5 miles per gallon. That means for every 100 miles you drive, you burn through roughly 40 gallons of fuel. It is an environmental nightmare, but a mechanical marvel of raw power. Despite its drinking problem, the Ural 375D was an off-road genius. It featured a central tire inflation system, allowing the driver to adjust tire pressure from inside the cabin to float over sand, swamp, or deep snow. It was used for everything from transporting troops to carrying the BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher system. The distinctive roar of its V8 engine could be heard from miles away. While it has largely been replaced by diesel versions today, the original gasoline-powered Ural remains a legend for its ability to traverse terrain that would stop a modern tank. Leaving the Soviet giants behind, we travel to East Germany to meet a true icon of the socialist era, the IFA W50. Built in the city of Ludwigsfelde, this truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was the backbone of an entire nation's economy. The W stands for Werdau, where it was designed, and 50 represents its payload capacity of 5 metric tons or about 11,000 pounds. Production started in 1965 and ran for an incredible 25 years. If you lived in the Eastern Bloc between the 60s and the 80s, you saw this truck every single day. The IFA W50 was powered by a 6.56-liter four-cylinder diesel engine. It wasn't built for speed, topping out at around 50 miles per hour, but it was built to last forever. Its design is instantly recognizable with its cab-over-engine layout and a friendly wide grille that gives it a distinct face. The engineering was focused on simplicity. You could practically repair it with a hammer and a basic wrench, which made it incredibly popular in developing countries. It was a massive export success, sold to nations across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, including Vietnam. What truly made the W50 special was its versatility. It had over 60 different variants straight from the factory. It served as a dump truck, a fire engine, a military troop carrier, a crane, and even a furniture van with an extended cabin. Some versions were equipped with balloon tires for agriculture, while others had all-wheel drive for military use. While it lacked the comfort and electronics of Western trucks, the IFA W50 represents pure utilitarian engineering at its finest. It was a truck that built nations, one load at a time. Welcome to Hungary. In the 1960s, the Hungarian People's Army needed a new off-road truck, and the Czepel Works delivered the D344. At first glance, it looks like a standard vintage military truck, perhaps a bit charming with its rounded hood. But if you look underneath the chassis, you will find a drivetrain layout that is completely unique in the world of trucks. Most 4x4 trucks use a central drive shaft to send power to a differential in the middle of the front axle. But Czepel engineers had a different idea. To keep the truck's profile low and stable, the engineers couldn't put a bulky differential directly under the engine. Their solution was a complex transfer case that sent power to the front wheels via two separate propeller shafts, one for the left wheel and one for the right. This intricate mechanical ballet allowed the engine to sit lower, giving the truck a much lower center of gravity than its competitors. It was powered by a 5.5-liter four-cylinder diesel engine producing roughly 100 horsepower. It wasn't a powerhouse, but it was smart. Despite its modest power and a top speed of only about 50 miles per hour, the D344 was surprisingly agile on mountain roads thanks to its clever weight distribution. It served faithfully for decades, towing artillery and carrying supplies across difficult terrain. While the dual-shaft system was complicated to maintain, it proved that Hungarian engineers were willing to think outside the box. Today, collectors love it for its quirks and that distinct, almost retro-futuristic rounded cabin. It is a prime example of how different nations solved the same problems in completely different ways. Czechoslovakia has a rich history of mechanical engineering, and one of their most famous creations is the Praga V3S, a legendary military off-roader. But what happens when you need a truck for regular roads? You get the Praga S5T. The S stands for Silničný, which means road in Czech, and 5T stands for its 5-ton capacity. Launched in the late 1950s, the S5T was essentially the civilized brother of the military V3S. It took the rugged bones of a war machine and adapted them for hauling coal, milk, and groceries. The most distinctive feature of the S5T is its engine. It used an air-cooled Tatra diesel engine. Yes, air-cooled. This meant there was no radiator to leak, no water pump to fail, and no coolant to freeze in the harsh winters. The engine sound is unmistakable, a loud clattering roar that you can hear from miles away. While the military version had a flat face, the S5T featured a long, protruding nose to house the engine, giving it better aerodynamics and a unique, almost anteater-like profile that stands out on the road. Inside, the cabin was more comfortable than the military version, although comfortable is a relative term for a truck from the 60s. The S5T was lowered for better stability on asphalt and geared for higher speeds, reaching about 45 miles per hour. It was the workhorse of Czechoslovakia for decades. While it might look strange to modernize, the S5T was a triumph of practical engineering. It's rugged, loud, and undeniably charismatic, a truck that refuses to die and still has a cult following among classic vehicle enthusiasts today. When you think of American heavy trucks, names like Mack or Peterbilt usually come to mind. But true connoisseurs know the legend of Brockway. Founded in Cortland, New York, Brockway started as a carriage builder in the 1800s before moving into trucks. The Model 761 is a prime example of their philosophy: rugged luxury. Why is it on this list? Because of its mascot. Every Brockway truck proudly displays a husky dog on the radiator grille. They were marketed as the most rugged truck in the world, and the husky symbolized stamina and strength. The 761 series, popular in the 60s and 70s, wasn't mass-produced on a generic assembly line like a Ford. These were often custom-built to the buyer's exact specifications. They were famous for their heavy-duty construction, using real steel fenders instead of fiberglass or plastic. Power came from massive diesel engines, often Cummins or Caterpillar, allowing these trucks to haul massive loads of timber or construction materials. Driving a Brockway 761 was a physical experience. No power steering in the early days, just a raw mechanical connection between the driver and the road. Sadly, the company closed its doors in 1977, making these trucks rare collectibles today. The Brockway 761 represents a bygone era of American manufacturing where quality and customization were more important than volume. Seeing a husky on the road today is a special treat for truck lovers. It stands as a monument to the golden age of trucking, a time when trucks had distinct personalities and were built to outlive their owners. But if a massive American semi is too big for you, how about a truck that is technically a motorcycle? We are now entering the weird and tiny section of our list, and we start in Italy with the Machi MB1. You might know the name Machi from their famous World War II fighter planes or Aermacchi motorcycles. After the war, Italy needed cheap, efficient transportation to rebuild the country, And Machi had a brilliant idea: combine a motorcycle with a truck. The MB1, introduced in the 1950s, is a three-wheeled diesel truck. Yes, 3 wheels. It looks like the front of a motorcycle was welded to the back of a cargo box. But don't let the size fool you. This was a serious machine. It featured a fully closed cabin for the driver, which was pure luxury compared to riding a scooter in the rain. It was powered by a robust 750cc diesel engine, providing enough torque to carry heavy loads of stone, wood, or produce. The design is incredibly utilitarian. The single front wheel allowed for a tight turning radius, perfect for navigating the narrow, ancient streets of Italian cities where a standard 4-wheel truck would get stuck. The Machi MB1 represents a specific moment in history where efficiency was more important than speed or comfort. Top speed was barely 40 miles per hour, and the ride was bumpy, but it got the job done. It chugged along with that classic diesel thumping sound, helping to build modern Italy. It is strange, it can be unstable at high speeds if you aren't careful, but it is undeniably cool. But if you think 3 wheels are weird, wait until you see a truck made of canvas. This might be the most adorable truck ever made. Meet the Solito. Produced in France by New Map starting in the 1950s, this vehicle stretches the definition of the word truck. It was designed as a sans-permis vehicle, meaning it had an engine so small that you didn't even need a driver's license to operate it in France. The Solito is basically a sheet metal box on 3 tiny wheels, weighing only about 300 pounds. It is so small you could almost park it in your living room. But the craziest part: to save weight and money, on earlier models like the TC, the doors and sides were often made of canvas. It is essentially a tent on wheels. Power came from a tiny 2-stroke engine, often around 125 cc, similar to what you would find in a small scooter. With less than 5 horsepower, the top speed was a terrifying 30 miles per hour, if you were brave enough to push it that far. It offers 0 crash protection, 0 speed, and 0 luxury, but it oozes character. It was marketed to small business owners, bakers, milkmen, and florists who needed to move goods short distances around the village. Driving one feels like you are sitting in a vintage toy. The engine buzzes right next to you, and you can feel every pebble on the road. It serves as a reminder of a time when regulations were loose, and innovation meant making things as simple as humanly possible. From a French tent truck, let's go to Japan for a truck that has the cutest face in automotive history. In the world of Japanese K-trucks, tiny vehicles regulated by government size limits, the Mazda Porter Cab stands out as the undisputed king of cuteness. Specifically, we are talking about the facelifted version introduced in 1977. While the original model was charming, the 77 update gave it a look that looks like it came straight out of an anime. The most distinctive feature is its face. It has 2 large round headlights surrounded by thick cream-colored plastic bezels that look like glasses or the eyes of a panda. Between those eyes is a small vent that looks like a nose. It literally looks like the truck is smiling at you. Beneath the cabin sits a small 550cc 2-cylinder engine, upgraded from the earlier versions to meet new regulations. It produces about 29 horsepower, which is just enough to carry its 300-pound payload through tight city streets. The engine sound is unique, a high-pitched buzz that sounds more like a lawnmower than a truck, adding to its toy-like appeal. It's tiny, efficient, and impossible to ignore. Despite its adorable appearance, the Porter Cab was a tough worker. It helped rebuild and sustain Japan's economy, navigating the tightest alleyways of Tokyo and Osaka where larger trucks couldn't fit. Today, they are cult classics around the world. People modify them, lower them, or just restore them to keep that happy face on the road. It is impossible to be angry when you see a 1977 Mazda Porter Cab. But for our final truck, we have something that isn't just cute, it is a global celebrity. We have saved the best for last. This is not just a truck, it is a marketing masterpiece, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. The idea was born in 1936 when Karl Mayer, the nephew of the company's founder, suggested building a vehicle shaped like a giant hot dog to promote their sausages. The concept was crazy, but it worked. While there have been many versions over the decades built on Dodge, Chevy, and GMC chassis, the core design remains the same: a 27-foot-long fiberglass hot dog resting on a yellow bun. This vehicle defies all logic. It is aerodynamic nonsense, visually loud, and serves no practical purpose other than to make people smile and hungry. The driver is officially called a hot dogger, and their job is to drive across America spreading joy and handing out wiener whistles. Underneath the bun, modern versions are typically powered by a powerful V8 engine, similar to a delivery van, allowing it to keep up with highway traffic at 65 miles per hour. It's a surreal sight to see a giant hot dog overtaking you on the freeway. The Wienermobile proves that sometimes the weirdest ideas are the most brilliant. It has survived for nearly a century, outliving almost every other car brand from the 1930s. Seeing one in real life is considered a sign of good luck by many. It is the ultimate combination of automotive engineering and pure American advertising genius. It is not just a vehicle, it is an icon of pop culture that brings out the inner child in everyone who sees it. These 10 mechanical marvels prove that automotive history is full of surprises, not just boring horsepower figures. From the frozen battlefields of the East to the sunny highways of the West, human creativity truly knows no bounds. I'm curious, if you had to pick one truck to survive a zombie apocalypse, which one would it be? The armored Ural or the speedy Wienermobile? Let us know below. If you enjoyed this wild ride, please smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing stories. Thanks for watching.